Okay, that's our signal to begin. This is the Affordable Housing Commission, our November noon meeting, monthly meeting. And first, I want to do an introduction to clarify what we do and what our goal, what our purpose is. The Affordable Housing Commission, and I'm going to read this from our mission. The Athens City Affordable Housing Commission is a commission of city government established to review best practices, investigate community affordable housing models, and identify needs and opportunities within Athens city limits to advance decent, safe, sustainable, affordable housing for all city residents. The Commission is tasked with providing advice and guidance on measures and policies that influence access to and needs within the local housing market. So I want to emphasize, we are not looking at just low-income housing, although of course we want to be concerned about that. We're also looking at housing for workers, housing for executives, housing for people with disabilities, the seniors, etc. So we want to be comprehensive in our view. I also want to emphasize that we are not we are an advisory commission. We don't, like some commissions have voting control over things like zoning, but we don't. But we are advisory, and we're hoping to provide a lot of good information and resources and inspire others to do what we can to help with affordable housing. So from there, our next step is to establish quorum, and right now we are missing Maria and Polly. Given how difficult it was to find parking today, that might be a reason why they're late. I don't anticipate them missing, so we'll see, but that we can still establish quorum, which we have. Okay. The next thing is the disposition of the minutes from October. Are there any changes based on what you read from our October 15th meeting? And your name was spelled right this time.
His name did I spell wrong?
So we're good. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from October?
I'll motion to approve.
And
I'll
you?
second.
Good, okay. All in favor of approving these?
Aye.
Good, thank you. We can move on then. All right, the next step is that we have a speaker, which we're excited to hear from. And this is Taylor, how do you pronounce your last name?
Cook.
Cook, okay. There's lots of spellings, pronunciations for that. So, and you're with Hilltide Partners, LLC, and you're going to talk about some possible affordable housing developments that you're looking into, and we really appreciate it. That is the purpose of what we're doing here. So we look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Absolutely. Just want to make sure. So I have a PowerPoint. I don't know if everybody is going to be able to see it.
You should, yes, there you go.
We're good. So good afternoon, Chair, members of the Athens Affordable Housing Commission. My name is Taylor Cook. I'm a development officer with Hilltide Partners. We are an affordable housing developer, and I'm speaking with you today because my firm is working on an affordable rental housing proposal off of Hooper Street, which is part of the city's 2nd Ward and the South Side neighborhood. Before we get too far down the road with this project, I wanted to share with you where we are in the process and seek input so that hopefully we can put together a housing concept that both the city and its residents can be proud of. Just a quick introduction, and I promise I'll keep this to 10 minutes. Of Hilltide Partners, we are the 22nd largest affordable housing developer in the country. We have developed over 34 properties with 3,300 units. It was formed back in 2017 by Bob Long and Dan Winters. There are 11 other staff members besides myself. I joined Hilltide Partners this year, and I'm responsible for finding new opportunities in Ohio and throughout the Midwest. Previously, I served as the Director of Multifamily Housing for the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, or OFA for short, which is the state housing tax credit allocating agency. Prior to that, I was a project leader with National Church Residences, which is the nation's largest nonprofit senior affordable housing developer. Aside from being a lifeguard in high school, I have dedicated my entire career to the affordable housing industry. I grew up in Worcester, Ohio, and I live currently in Columbus. So just a sense of the type of projects that we've done. I just have two quick examples here. The first one is the estates at Shiloh in Dallas, Texas. This is a 4% housing tax credit property, contains 264 units, a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, and 2-bedroom units. 249 of those units are restricted to households earning between 30 and 60% of the area median income. And secondly is Pegram Landing in Louisville, North Carolina. So this is a 60-unit, 9% housing tax credit property for families between 30 and 80% of the area median income, with a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom unit size. This property started construction last year and leased up earlier this summer. So I think the question that you might have is why are developers bothering you? The number one reason is that the federal housing tax credit is responsible for the overwhelming majority of all new affordable rental housing. And while it's federal in nature, each state implements it through their state housing credit agencies. In Ohio, that is the Ohio Housing Finance Agency, or OFA for short. So in the upcoming February 2025 9% LIHTC round, the agency has several scoring criteria, 2 of which are geography-based. I went ahead and mapped those on this slide for you. So these include an opportunity index, which looks at an agglomeration of factors such as transportation, housing, health, as well as education and employment. And then the second criteria is discount to market rent, which looks at the difference between the market rents in the area and the tax credit rents. And they're looking for a healthy difference so that you're actually providing a benefit. A lot of folks think that housing tax credits can actually work in areas with low population or low rents, and it's subject to the same economic conditions that really a market rate developer would be subject to as well. So in all of OFA programs, there is a set aside for a number of deals in Appalachian counties. Athens, of course, is one of those. In Athens County, the highest scoring area is Census Tract 9733, which is that southeast corner. That's why you're probably going to see other proposals for this exact census tract. So, of course, not only is that census tract important, but being multifamily housing, being within the city limits is important, so you have access to water and sewer. So truly the only portion of that census tract that overlaps with the city is what affordable housing developers are looking at. And that takes me to our site. So we are currently under contract for a total of about 18 acres off of Hooper Street, just across the street from Monticello Village, which you can see there on the north. Monticello Village is a 2-story multi-building rental property that was constructed in 1969, has 68 units, a mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. The total site size that we're looking at as far as this property is about 5.13 acres, so it's a collection of parcels that you're seeing there in white. In Appendix D of our rezoning application, you'll see that we're under contract for 18.45. So there are additional parcels to the east, which if we were to get those annexed, that red line is the city corporation limit. It would allow us additional flexibility with site design. We're not looking at an additional phase 2 necessarily on this site, so we could also look at doing something else with that additional acreage. So that plus or minus 5 acres on the left-hand side of that red line, the corporation limit, is what we are seeking a rezoning application for. So this is the current zoning. I have a little blow up on the right-hand side. You can sort of see over here, this is that red area. That's our site that we're looking at. So it's currently zoned R1. Just to the north is R3, and that's Monticello Village. Just to the south is R2. So we will need to seek a zoning change from R1 and R2. These properties are a collection of R1 and R2 to R3 in order to construct a viable multifamily project. And we will be on a subsequent planning commission meeting to start that process as well. So this is our preliminary site plan, and I will stop after this if there are any questions. You can see that we're proposing 2 3-story buildings, somewhere between 50 and 80 total units. We will have a 1-to-1 parking both in front and behind each building. Those familiar with the site will know that this is a hilly area And there is a stream at the bottom of the site. So we are proposing a culvert between the buildings to allow for vehicular access to that second building that's a little bit further south. We also intend on having a separate community building with a community room, community kitchen, a patio area, and a small park. So this is where I would like to pause if there are any comments on that right away.
I missed how many bedrooms?
So the project that we are proposing is somewhere between 50 and 80 units. It'll be a mix of 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. I can tell you as of right now, and this could change as we start going through the architectural and engineering process. I stress that these are preliminary plans. We're looking at a mix of, well, the majority of the units would be 1s and 2s, and then about 30 to 40% 3s and 4s.
Yeah.
Could you tell me, will these have elevators, and how many units will be ADA accessible?
So this proposed site as it is a 3-story walk-up building. Now, for accessibility, so Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, it requires that 5% of all new construction projects that are financed with federal financial assistance have to be 504 accessible. And the standard for that is the Uniform Federal Accessibility Standards, or UFAS. So think turning radius, wider doorways, wider hallways, things like that. So while tax credits, which we would be seeking from OFA, are not federal financial assistance, OFA requires that you meet the 504 requirements, and not only meet them, but double them. So we will have twice as many 504 mobility units meeting that UFAS standard than a comparable property. So assuming, let's say, the property ends up being 60 units, then at least 6 of those units would need to meet 504 mobility requirements.
Transportation. So I know that's a concern because a lot of these people likely will need to have a bus transit. And I don't know how, I think Rob knows about this kind of thing. The bus, you seem to have pretty good knowledge on the bus situation. And I'm not sure that the bus goes out that way, right? Yeah. So I think that's a consideration we're concerned about. Is there, I wish I knew more about the Hooper spot, but are there any little shops or go-marts or any of that kind of stuff anywhere nearby?
So if we can go back to the PowerPoint for just a second, and I can go back to the site plan. So I guess this isn't the best, I can't zoom out from here, but if you were to head west on Hooper Street, then there's commercial on the other side of, that's County Road 198. There isn't commercial necessarily right here, but again, you are right across the street from an existing multifamily property. The Athens 2040 comprehensive plan talks about having sidewalks. There are not currently sidewalks on Hooper Street, and that's something that we would be willing to look at to integrate into this site plan to help facilitate at least some pedestrian movement.
That would be very much appreciated. So.
So I will wrap this up. I hope I'm not going too far over my 10-minute limit here. But this is our preliminary elevations. So this shows the community building on the left and then the 3-story building, one of those buildings, dead center. So as I mentioned before, this site does have some pretty significant elevation changes. So this is not the best rendering for this specific site. We had to kind of move quickly just to be able to bring some elevations for you. But these will be adjusted for the contours of the site. It's about a 16 or so foot drop from Hooper Street down to the bottom of the site where you see that stream. And then lastly, this slide shows the rent breakdown for 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. The majority of these units will be targeted at households making 60% of the area median income, with 10% restricted for those making at or below 30% of the area median income. So this top table will show you what is the assumed income for a household and these income thresholds at different bedroom types. So the takeaway here is that the majority is that the property will be mixed income. So some units reserved for individuals who are at 30% AMI, some reserved for moderate income individuals, 80% AMI, or 70% AMI in this case. So we're trying to create a mixed income community. It's not restricted only to those making the lowest incomes, but you'll see a variety of households here. So with that, I want to thank you for your time and would be happy to answer any other questions. Again, we're early in the process, so my thought was this could hopefully be a conversation that we can have, integrate some ideas that might be helpful to make this site a success.
And you want to ultimately annex the land next to it, so that's a process too, but it's been done before. The 682 apartments were annexed into the city, so that seems like it could be possible if everybody's on board with it. So thank you. Any questions? Anybody in the audience have a question?
What's so I understand this is preliminary, but what do you anticipate is going to be driving that unit count? Is it the site? Is it zoning requirements? Is it parking? Is it funding? Like what's going to determine where you land there?
Yes, and so this is going to apply to anybody seeking 9% housing credits from the state. So your housing credits at OFA are limited, so you max out at right around 1.75 million. And so what that means is as you keep increasing units, you keep getting credits, but up to a point. So that point is roughly around, let's say, 65 to 75 units. So we wouldn't be going further than that. And then on the flip side, there's no minimum. However, you want to have a little bit of scale so you can build some economy so that you can have things like on-site management, which we're proposing, some services, on-site maintenance, things like that. Yeah, so tax credits, the way that it works is they are sold to an investor that then provides equity into the deal, essentially cash. And if we were doing a market rate deal, if you were lowering rents, then the amount of private debt that you can leverage goes way down. So these are not feasible without having some other type of subsidy. So the equity comes into the deal so you have a little bit coming in at closing, and then by the time you're done with construction, most of that equity is in the project. And then in return, the state requires you to sign a 30-year restrictive covenant that limits those rents, limits the incomes, ensures that that tenants cannot be removed. They cannot be evicted for anything other than good cause. So you can't just non-renew a lease. It would have to be a violation of the lease terms. So that would be a minimum 30 years of affordability that we would be providing here. But we're a long-term owner and holder. We don't intend on, having anything other than affordable housing in our portfolio. So typically what happens is, it depends. Owners can do different things. What we would do is once the project, if it needs more capital investment, let's say we need to do a rehabilitation, then we would go back to the state agency for 4% credits, which are non-competitive. That would help us with the rehabilitation, starts the whole cycle over again. You get another 30-year commitment. So our intention is, permanent affordability, not to convert to market at 30 years. That being said, there are other owners out there. It is something to, be mindful of, that you can, those restrictions will go away after 30 years if you don't. The term is resyndicate or seek another allocation of credits.
Thank you, that's very helpful. All right, unless anybody's got anything else, and I don't want to rush anyone, but we do want to move on if we can. Thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to hearing more about it. Sidewalks, transportation, the other stuff sounds good. Okay, all right, moving on to city updates. Megan, do you want to talk briefly about anything new? We're going to talk about the welcome home if we have a few minutes to discuss that. That would be
Sure.
great.
Yeah.
So the city applied for grant funding through the state's Welcome Home Ohio program, and we were granted $2 million to build 8 affordable housing units throughout the city. And the best thing about that program, in my opinion, is that it essentially establishes a revolving loan fund for the city, because the city is the developer, will get the revenue from the initial sales, then we can put that back into building additional affordable housing units. Those units will be also deed restricted to have a minimum 20-year period of being owner occupied, and then there are also income restrictions like for qualified buyers upon purchase. So the long-term affordability and owner-occupied aspects of those homes will be included in the deed. The city has identified several different properties throughout the city, and we're working on identifying the best properties to move forward with now. We are partnering with developer Joe Recchi on this project, and so he's kind of helping us make these decisions on where these investments need to go. And I don't have like a long-term timeline, but I do know that we're working on this now, and so the ball is rolling, and I'll definitely share updates when I have them. Are there any other questions about the program? Okay, great.
Thank you. That's great. Okay, so real quick, I just want to mention that the Ridges is moving forward, it looks like. We don't have, it appears, based on what we've heard, the latest a few days ago, and that was that the state has to approve the transfer of land from Ohio University to the new community authority, which the city has established, to be able to do something with it and develop it. And again, perhaps not coincidentally, Joe Recchi is part of that process. We anticipate that that will happen in December, that transfer will be made. They've been through a lot of red tape and a lot of stuff. But anyway, hopefully that will go through in December so that design process and everything can start moving in as soon as possible after that. They anticipate as many as 700 housing units. That's huge and would be a great boon to the city. It would be partly in the historic buildings, the ones that OU are not going to be keeping, and then additional housing between Dairy Lane and Richland, the land back in that area and on the other side of Dairy Lane. All that work that you got stuck when you tried to go down Dairy Lane for months and months, that was to put in part infrastructure so that they can build there. So that's really good news. I think that's the most important thing I think I have to share today, so we're going to move on from there. And let's see, Shay, do you have anything to add?
I was out of town, so I missed the BZA meeting, but I do believe there were a couple of maybe indirectly housing-related items that were on the agenda. Actually, Rob would have a better update than I do, but I believe a couple of requests for reductions in parking requirements, which I think is a zoning issue that does impact housing affordability, as well as a couple of, I believe, applications for ground floor residential use in, I don't know what the zones were, but basically in areas where commercial is required on the ground floor. So, that's potentially another kind of part of our zoning code that's causing bottlenecks related to housing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on as we try to get finished here. So any other housing, city or housing related news that anybody has? Okay. I guess we'll move on from there. All right. Another thing is that we have a nominating committee, and they did nominate officers for next 2025, and so I thought we would do that now. Okay. Nominating committee.
How does this work?
Well, you put forward the slate of candidates, and then you see if we want to get a first, propose, and then a second, and then we'll vote for it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, the nominating committee was Mary, myself, and Megan Vogel. And I guess I'll speak since Mary is not speaking today. So, so we met and we wanted to nominate Solveig for chair. Do we do it individually or all at once?
Do it all together.
Yeah,
All together,
It's okay
all
to do it all
right.
together.
Great. Vice Chair Polly Sumney, who has accepted that nomination. I know she's not here. And then Molly Fitzgerald as secretary. So that's the nomination on the table.
Okay, we need a second or discussion.
Second.
Oh, okay. How about a vote? Thank you. Thank you.
Any
All right,
nays?
pass it. Oh,
We have to ask for nays.
nays? Okay.
Okay, I
Great,
guess we have-
congratulations.
Thank you very much, I think.
And thank you for the guiding through that process.
Yes, well, you'll get used to it.
I will.
It's okay. All right, so we finished that part. Thank you very much. Congratulations to, too bad Polly's not here, but
Yeah.
she already accepted, so we're good. All right, we finished that bit of administration, and then the next part is making sure that we have 4 committees. The nominating committee already said what they needed to say. Thank you very much. The next is a new development committee, and this is where, Ryan, if you could put up the goals for the new development committee up on the screen, that would be great. And so I'll ask the new development committee with Megan.
Sure. So we met back in October, right?
Yep.
Not remembering. Okay.
October 8th.
Yes, and so we kind of sat down and talked about the goals and focuses that we would want to work together on as a committee. And we drafted up this list here. And I'll just kind of read through it for everyone in case you can't read the screen. First is that we'd like to find development opportunities. What we mean by this is by identifying locations in Athens that could be good for new affordable housing, especially focusing on filling in empty spaces within the city. So looking at infill development mostly. This also includes looking at changes to local zoning rules that would make it easier to build different types of housing. Next is a very important part in engaging the community, especially related to, I think, any potential zoning changes. So we would like to get the community involved early on in the planning process so that residents can share what they want and need, especially from new housing. Next, we would also like to focus on attracting new housing projects, and we're going to look for grants and tax incentives and also partnerships that could help fund new affordable housing developments. And then lastly, we would like to support a variety of different housing options by encouraging developments that are affordable, accessible, and also appeal to everyone from seniors, families, to young professionals. And we would also, a part of that, like to work closely with the Disabilities Commission to ensure that new housing meets accessibility standards. Those are kind of our draft focus and goals for right now, and our next meeting will be in early December.
Yes, does anybody have any comments, questions about those goals? Take exception to them, ask why there isn't something new or different than you have? But I thought they were pretty good, but we wanted to make sure that they were available to the public so that people knew what we were doing and that people could comment on it. Any comments from either the committee, other members of the Affordable Housing Commission, or the audience? Oh, a thumbs up? Was that a thumbs up? Good. We like that. Thank you. We really appreciate that. All right, good. Okay, let's move on to the neighborhood revitalization goals. Ryan, could you please put those up on the screen? Okay, a little hard to read, but I will try to go through them with you. So this is Maria, unfortunately not here, Zach.
I think Maria is here now.
She snuck in.
I should have
Oh,
said that.
sorry about that.
For the sake
She's
of the
way down
minutes.
there. She's way down there.
Maria joined at like 12:15ish.
Yes, so she got here, good. And then Polly, Kimberly, and Michelle Pappy, who is our advisory person consultant, not officially on, but we, according to our bylaws, we can have people who are consultants, and we encourage folks like we could use a real estate person, for those in the audience, by the way, who can help us with advisement. Okay, so these are, again, about 4. I tweaked it a little bit from the meeting that we had, so I hope you guys are okay with it. I didn't get comments back when I sent them out. But first is develop a focus and vision for new housing development. So we kind of, it overlaps with new development, but we thought that after consulting with Megan, we thought that this would work. Identify vacant or abandoned properties for housing, collaborate with realtors, developers, contractors, and other stakeholders to identify projects and goals. So we appreciate having someone come here today. Thank you, Taylor. And second, identify strategies to improve the health factors and safety of properties. Identify property-related needs, risks, and barriers to improvement in each neighborhood. Develop strategies collaboratively with stakeholders to address this issue. And engage city administration to meet our goals. Of course, that would include code enforcement, et cetera. And so that's fairly straightforward, I hope. We'll move on to community information and education. And of course, this would be in conjunction with the communications committee that is kind of ad hoc at this moment. We'll use them when we need them. And that would be Polly and Amy. And we look forward to having them help. And I'm going to ask them for some help later on this meeting. So there's that. And then, let's see, where did I leave off? Okay. Right, collect info. Where did I meet? Okay, meet our goals, provide education for home improvement programs, like we had HAPCAP come out and talk about what programs there are that we might be able to better inform people about, and make that on our website so people can look them up. And then, because some people, they want to do some improvements to their house, they don't have the money, or they're seniors or disabled or low income. And so if we provide them with information about potential grants and opportunities to improve their homes, that will be good for them, it'll be good for the neighborhoods, and so we want to do more with that. Provide education about grant-supported projects, that's kind of related, obviously. Provide information about landlord-tenant rights and responsibilities. There's a group who's been doing tips for tenants in the local news for the last few months. That's part of that effort, is to try to provide that, and I'd like to work closer with the university for students to help them with opportunities to know more what their rights and responsibilities are. Collect information for renters and property owners to assist with property revitalization. So, what kinds of information could we have a little better for people through the Code Enforcement Office and other venues? Coordinate with citywide annual revitalization activities. So collaborate with city diversion program, student engagement, rural action, Athens Hocking Solid Waste District, and other potential stakeholders to help with revitalization activities and make the neighborhoods a little safer and cleaner, and doing as much as we can to meet the needs of that neighborhood. Organize neighbor-to-neighbor assistance programs to facilitate services for lawn care, snow shoveling, and light maintenance. This may be a heavy lift, but we thought if we can get the neighbors to feel a sense of neighborliness and help each other out and kind of get excited about that, that could be a huge help for seniors trying to stay in their homes, for example, or people with disabilities, certainly. So what can we do to get people excited about helping their neighbors? Like the old school, hey, my neighbor's 85 and can't shovel his driveway. I think I'll go over and shovel his driveway for him. That kind of thing. And maybe get people excited, including students, to get involved with that. And we used to do more of that in the community and haven't really as much as I'd love to see. And then set annual goals and prayers to improve the appearance and property safety of neighborhoods. Again, want to make clear, not trying to gentrify anybody's neighborhood. I want people to be happy with what they have and not go over, but I want things to be safe and make people feel comfortable for the standards they set for their neighborhood. So that's it. Any comments, questions? We're okay with that? We can move forward with that? Any comments from the audience? Yes.
Rob Delich, I live on Morris Avenue here in the city. the neighbor-to-neighbor assistance program is a great idea. We've talked about it in the ad hoc pedestrian accessibility committee 2 years ago, and we've been talking about it last winter in the new pedestrian accessibility and bicycle task force. No progress has been made on it, but it's an idea we've talked about, and that would be nice, especially and the thoughts with the task force is clearing sidewalks so that they're accessible also in the winter. And in particular, helping the elderly to do that makes sense, I think. So I love the idea. I don't know where to get started on it. Is the reason nothing has happened so far, but I'd like to see us do something. So maybe we'll work
And
together
maybe we
on
can
things.
partner on that. You know, again, these things don't get done unless there's community energy and a lot of, organizations are involved and people get excited. So maybe it's partly through HOAs, for example, or community associations. We have West Side Community Association. I'd like to get that revitalized, and so we can maybe get people excited about doing some of these things. But thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate that. Any other comments? Okay. So last thing is the Communication Education Committee, but I think it's ad hoc, so.
It's ad hoc. We haven't met yet, but Polly and I are working on getting together to just map out what we think our goals would be, like
Yeah.
the other committees.
Yes, and,
So-
we've talked about, when we last all met, it'd be nice to have more stuff on the website. So for example, I suggested that and I talked to Scott about this, and it's fine, we can have the name of the committees and then have a link to the goals and other information. So we can set up our website so that there's a lot more information without making it be, like scroll down, 100 pages. Can't work with that. But we can be creative with how we put it together, so that's the plan. Okay, we're getting through here. It's happening. For the good of the order. So I wanted to talk about a few things as part of this section, and that is I was asked to present to the Athens Board of Realtors on Friday, which I did, and I requested from them, as part of that, I did an exercise with them asking, what would they like to see, what's important for them, and Michelle Pappy, thank you very much, was there to provide some history and write notes and whatnot, so I'm not going to report everything that happened in the interest of time, but I wanted to share the things that they said, and what was very heartening, also we have a member that was there, thank you very much, and she's interested, and maybe I'll ask you to talk for a minute, in perhaps joining us and doing some advising. It's important, it would be helpful to have somebody in real estate, since we're talking about affordable housing. So some of the things that came out of that discussion were they would be interested in collaborating with us on affordable housing, and Michelle, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or, yeah. Remind me your name again, I'm sorry. Miranda. I'm sorry, I have trouble with that name, thank you. You can correct me if I'm wrong, so here we go. Again, they said they'd be interested in collaborating with us on affordable housing. Obviously, it's in their interest, too, to be able to have more housing to sell and whatnot, make neighborhoods look nice. They have some resources, which Jennifer, who organized this, gave to me. This is actually really quite good. She has many more copies, and it's called On Common Ground, and it has lots of really interesting ideas about expanding housing options, which we don't have much time to talk about today, but I will be sharing more of those as we go along, and perhaps Miranda will want to do that too. So anyway, there's some great ideas in here. If anybody wants a copy, I have one for me, and I'd love to share it with someone else. I'm going to give this to Molly for now, because I think that would be a good use of it. I'd be happy to get more. There's all kinds of cool ideas in there. Many of them I've heard of, but it describes how they work and, what kinds of, well, I'll give a couple examples. So one of them is having, for example, seniors who have a good-sized house, right? And they're by themselves now, or maybe a couple. It's starting to get harder to take care of the house. They don't really want to sell it, but they have extra bedrooms, and we have students and people who could use some housing. and then create a system where, you provide essentially roommates, right? So it's works well in other parts of the country. I heard a story about this on NPR not long ago, actually. And it can really be helpful for both the student getting relatively low rents, but also have an opportunity for seniors to have somebody around the house and somebody to maybe run an errand with them or something. Anyway, I think these kinds of ideas are worth looking at and considering, that might be helpful for a lot of people. Again, everything has to be planned carefully, obviously, but I think there's a lot of cool ideas out there, and several of them are in here, and I particularly gravitated that one right off the bat. But another thing is they're interested in building inspectors. Now, I talked with David Riggs, and he would love, they've been talking about that for a while. There is some movement in that direction. And one piece of this is that if we have building inspectors, which we don't have now, we have to have people come down from Columbus, not a good use of our time. But if we have in-house, as it were, we could actually make that a profit maker in that the other communities around here would not have to have people come down from Columbus. They could have them come through us. Now that's a benefit, and so it's worth looking at. We also talked about Airbnbs, and that's another thing we've talked about working on, is a new ordinance or revised ordinance that would say, well, Airbnbs are great when they're owner occupied because that doesn't take away housing. It just adds some additional income for folks who could use a little extra income. It's another matter altogether if you have housing that you have investors buy up a bunch of places, taking that housing off the market and making it just occasional use and whatnot, especially in R1 zones. So I think we kind of thought that was a good idea when we talked about it before. I think they thought it was a pretty good idea. Rob, you want to talk about that?
Sure, I'm going to put on a different hat now. So Rob Delich, Chair of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the City of Athens. So we've seen a number of requests for whole home short-term rentals. Most of those have been on the main arterials, which are allowed under conditional use by the code, which was sort of a compromise. But what that means, conditional use has to be granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals. And it doesn't fall under the same kind of questions and criteria that we normally consider. It's more an opinion, as described by Director Riggs. And so we have yet to approve any of those. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I don't speak for the board. We're all individuals and make our own decisions on those votes, but it's been consistently voting against the whole home short-term rentals. We have granted a few short-term rentals where they were owner-occupied and they didn't have a permit to be able to do that, or some other restriction that allowed them then to do that. We just had one this past week, which was parking was the limitation. Wanted to do a short-term rental in her basement and needed an extra parking space. So we did grant that variance, so she did not need the extra space. So the board has repeatedly talked about how we're sort of, some of the members have been a little angry, I guess you could say, at council for setting this up for the conditional use. So now it's all on the board to make these decisions.
Right.
And we feel like it's really not something we should be having to do. And there's been a regular flow of these. And there will be more, I'm sure. And there's also some illegal whole house Airbnbs in the city currently that code office is not either aware of or not enforcing against. I'm not sure which. So there's some things to consider here, and I think relooking the ordinance would be a good idea, eliminating the conditional use possibly, I'm not sure what the right answer is exactly, but would certainly be willing to weigh in and discuss that.
Thank you. I have observed meetings where this was discussed, and clearly it is a problem, and we don't want to burden the Board of Zoning Appeals unnecessarily. I mean, part of our responsibility is to make, for City Council to make ordinances that don't put the Board of Zoning Appeals or any other group into that kind of position. So I think that if we could work on that, that would be great, and work with Rob for suggestions. After all, you've been experiencing this, that would be wonderful. So let's be in touch.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, another issue is we don't have enough contractors. Don't know what we can do about that, but that was a concern that people expressed. I know that I've heard people talk about that. And adding ADUs and tiny houses, I think that's under discussion in planning. Do you want to mention that at all?
I think those are some of the housing types that the new development committee would be interested at looking at, bringing to the public to see about whether or not those types of housing units or some other housing formats which would be appropriate to add to our zoning code here in Athens.
Okay, they talked about the need for more creative financing. Not sure what we can do about that, and they want to know more about new programs. You know, like they want to know about the Welcome Home thing or, you know, other projects that are going on. You know, we always like more communication. So there were some other things they talked about, like NIMBY, you know, not in my backyard, becomes a problem sometimes. That's going to happen in any community, and I think one of the things that I'm really happy with Megan about in her role as planning director is that she has done a wonderful job of going out to the HOAs, going out to the communities, explaining what the new policies that they're trying to propose and how it would help them, so that after doing that, they became much more open to some changes. And I think that should set a model for all of us. If we've got some ideas and we'd like to do stuff, but we know that there might be some problems, let's make sure that we talk about it to the populations and neighborhoods that will be affected, so that we can avoid some of the problems that come with NIMBYism. So, and that's why I appreciate Taylor coming this early in the process to let us know and have us give some input to what we would be really like to see and would help the neighborhoods. So we encourage any developers to please come to us. We've had one other from Spire that was very nice, and that was helpful. So I know that there are projects that are being looked at on the Columbus Road corridor, because with the hospital here, we have opportunities for other businesses and apparently other housing that we, obviously with those new businesses, means people could use housing. We also have, as we've talked about before, the Sunset Motel, because we do have a emergency housing issue. So the Sunset Motel was purchased by HAPCAP, and that's something that will take, we're encouraging community input about that so that people can, again, find out as much as they can about it, understand how it will work, you know, and assuage any concerns as much as possible so that we can make these things happen. There's a lot of wonderful projects happening, and we want to make sure that the community is aware of this and make this and our website and our meetings open to people to learn about new ideas and bring ideas to us. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about briefly is that we have to provide the city council with a report. And I sent you all, probably didn't have a chance to see it because I sent it rather late, but I did send it to Ryan. And this is where, Ryan, if you could pull that up real quick, I'll have a chance to go through that. And I guess I'm going to have to be at the podium because that's where the laptop is. So if you'll bear with me, this is a very rough draft, by the way, so please understand that it's too long right now. And what I did was I used some of what I presented to the Board of Realtors, and I've only partially cleaned it up for that. So I'm just going to run through this really quickly and show you the slides, because we don't have time for a full presentation, nor is it ready for that. But I wanted you to take a look at it, make it available for people, and then you can decide what you want to do. So essentially, the charge is for us to tell City Council what we've been doing the last year, get a sense of where we're going, so that they can feel comfortable. And I think it's important for the public in that kind of setting, the City Council members, the administrators, the staff, and the public to know what we're doing, again, so that we can make more progress. Anyway, so this is pretty much as it is, collaborating to create more affordable housing in Athens. No question mark is needed. Again, rough draft, so bear that in mind. And I'd like Michelle, if she's willing, to talk about the history part again. Are you willing? You don't need to. Okay. All right, well, we'll take her name off. But then, again, rough draft. It would be, if you're, well, we'll talk about it. And then if Megan could talk a little bit about some of the new stuff happening, because this is not really what we've done so much as what's happening, and I think they ought to know. But we'll see. So the goals are to present mission, history, and accomplishments, discuss the 4 committees' goals, and provide insights on current affordable housing initiatives, policies, and opportunities. So that we want to keep this to 10 minutes, and the one I did with with Michelle was an hour and a half, but we had an exercise. So this is cut down quite substantially. And then I'm going to give the mission, like I do at the beginning of every meeting, and read that over for them, as I did at the beginning of this meeting. I'm going to discuss the purposes. I'm just going to cut and paste that basically from what is in the bylaws and whatnot. A little bit about the history, as I said, how it started, how long it's been here, what's going on. And also the fact that it was on pause for a bit for some good reasons, and some of the highlights from the original housing report. Just a little bit about each, just to give an idea. Some things we've been working on, some things we'll forever be working on. So, but there was some really good material in there, and Michelle was part of that process. Okay, and then describe the member composition. Next is we talking about what we did this past year. So revise the bylaws, connect with existing members, add new members, because some left or went, like with Megan. Establish committees and goals, fill and establish leadership, and reach out to collaborate with departments, organizations, and agencies to work on projects and goals. So, we've reached out to code enforcement, solid waste district, rural action, there's other HOAs, et cetera, to kind of say, here's what, and the university, to say, we'd like to do more stuff, and, how can we work with that? And a number of other organizations, too. So I'd appreciate your thoughts on what we should say here. So if you could send that to me before December 9th, because we're doing this December 9th. That's why I need to talk about this today. All right, and then I will describe the committees and describe some of the goals real quickly. And then, depending on how much time we have, I thought it would be helpful to just talk about, and this is really Megan's thing, but the bulk controls, that this was an accomplishment this year. I think this was great. The zoning changes there, I think, are really helpful. And again, we can talk about how much you want to discuss that. Then I thought I would just talk about some of the other projects that are in progress. And I didn't mention Hooper because I didn't really know that much about it yet, but I could, and some other projects like that. So I'll talk about the ridges, and hopefully, cross fingers, that we'll have an answer back about the ridges. But, it's December 9th, we'll see. I'm going to talk about the project Co-Create, which is the Sunset Motel and all of that, just for a minute. Transitional affordable housing, SAOP, that I may or may not talk about because it's not really us, but I think it's important for them to just sort of know that, low-income housing, transitional housing is being done in the community. I'll talk a little bit about the Columbus Corridor and Welcome Home Ohio Grant. Again, this is Megan can decide how much she feels comfortable talking about some of this stuff. So then I have just a slide on each of those things, and that's it. All right, anything glaring that I missed? If so, please tell me. Any comments in general?
I don't know if this is the place for it, but I mean, I think looking forward to, you know, looking forward and thinking about the affordable housing problem holistically. I mean, there are some good projects in the work, but these projects aren't a solution. Like the project that the housing crisis is going to continue to get worse, and a lot of people are going to continue to be affected. There's a lot more work to be done, like more zoning reform, you know, and a lot of the things that were brought up today. And so I think addressing those items, you know, I think it's, you know, might make sense. There's
So address it, like putting a whole slide at least on barriers
kind of
and-
looking forward, like
Looking
what are
forward.
identifying
Yeah.
what are some of the drivers of the affordable housing crisis as we you know, see them, or what are potential avenues that should be explored further.
Right.
You know, I think, at least for me, zoning reform is an obvious one, but there are a lot of other things that I think have been brought up today, and that
Okay.
you know, that relate to housing affordability, or, you know, safety, and like building inspections, legalizing ADUs, all of these items that are kind of interrelated. You know, I think a lot of the projects that we've talked about here, well, I guess not a lot of them, some of them are market rate, but a lot of the projects that we've talked about are LIHTC projects, which is only one small subset of the housing issue. So I think there's, like, you know, there's a lot more that kind of feeds into the housing crisis and I think my point is just not kind of presenting the idea that, you know, we've done these things have been accomplished, and so we are, you know, like, maybe not presenting the idea that more has been done to solve the housing crisis than is the reality, because the situation's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yes, I did not include much about future stuff, except for having what the goals of the committees are, but I will include that. Please, Shay and everybody else, anything that you feel needs to be in here, remembering that I've got 10 minutes, please send it, and I will make sure to include it, really, from all of you. And anybody in the audience, too, if you think that we should be presenting or talking about, please send me something, and I'll do something. Yeah, December 9th. See, we had a conversation about that last night, and they think you're doing it. So please talk to Debbie. Yeah, well, talk to Debbie. 'Cause I thought she did. All right, so I think before we end the meeting, I'd like to have any concluding comments, questions, anything that the audience wanted to say, or you came here to talk about, or whatever. Please, this is your time. You're good? Yes.
I've already done with Athens, and I just wanted to put out there that we try to speak into I just wanted to say that I've been looking into community land trusts, not just in the city of Athens, but also the county. I've been reaching out to municipalities throughout the county, Athens, as well as Chansey, Gloucester. Haven't connected with Albany yet. And if anyone is interested in those conversations, please let me know. Hoping to schedule a meeting in the new year to kind of see what we can do. And we're hoping to do a visit to Yellow Homes Inc., or Yellow Spring Homes Inc. in Yellow Springs. So that'll be also in the spring. Thanks.
Thank you, and you know I'm interested, so, yeah, so we'll talk about
I
that.
have cards if anybody needs them.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? And yes, I should have asked her to go to the podium right away, so please, if you have something to say, nobody can hear it if you don't go to the podium. And Scott's back there waving at me, and I'm like, anyway, so, yeah, thank you. Anybody else? And if not, it's 1 o'clock, and we can ask for, does anybody want to? Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, I think we've got, everybody wants, is okay with adjourning? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.